So, I have already made a list of my favorite Killer songs, and full disclosure, for the past year, I wanted to make a series counting down my favorite songs by my favorite bands, but I never had a good excuse to do so until the Killers released Imploding Mirage. Now that the series has finally begun, I'm going to continue by counting down my favorite Coldplay songs. A quick history lesson on the band before we officially begin. Vocalist, guitarist, pianist Chris Martin met guitarist Johnny Buckland at University College London in September of 1996. The two spent the rest of the year planning on forming a band, which they originally named Pectorals. Classmate Guy Berryman joined the band and would become the bassist. In 1997, they renamed their band Starfish and started performing at local gigs. Chris hired his friend Phil Harvey to be the band's manager and would be known as the band's secret fifth member. Will Champion completed the lineup by volunteering as the band's drummer, despite having no experience. This would later cause some conflict with the band, as they would fire Will, but later brought him back. Will improved his drumming skills, and the band formed a system to ensure their longevity, but I'm jumping the gun. The band finally settled on the name Coldplay and released their first unofficial EP, Safety, in 1998. In December of that year, the quartet signed to their first label, Fierce Panda, and in 1999, they released their first official EP, Brothers and Sisters. Coldplay later signed a contract with Parlophone and released their second official EP, The Blue Room. It wasn't until March of 2000 when Coldplay released their first hit song, Shiver, but the release of their iconic track Yellow put the band on the map. Coldplay's first studio album, Parachutes, was released on July 10, 2000, to critical and commercial success. Today, Coldplay is one of the biggest bands in the world, and at the time of writing, their most recent album, Everyday Life, dropped on November 22, 2019. Coldplay has released a total of 8 studio albums, 6 live albums, 7 compilation albums, 47 music videos, 12 EPs, and 42 singles. That gives me a lot of material to work with, and I ended up with a pretty lengthy list. Just like my Killers list, I'll be splitting this video into 2 parts for convenience. I have nothing more to say, so let's just get into it. Here are my top 28 favorite Coldplay songs. Number 28. A Head Full of Dreams. I confess that I have my issues with the band's 2015 album and would consider it to be one of their weakest. I wouldn't go as far as to say it's a bad album because it does have some bangers, including the title track, A Head Full of Dreams. A Head Full of Dreams is about landing in a world where dreams come to life, and I suppose the song could be about dreams as a whole. Some people may dismiss this as cheesy, which I have to ask, what's wrong with that? If it's a fun song, who cares if it's cheesy? This song, and the album as a whole, is in stark contrast to the previous Coldplay album, Ghost Stories. Ghost Stories was much more melancholy and monochromatic, while Head Full of Dreams is much more colorful and full of life. The opening track does an excellent job establishing this shift in sound and tone, and prepares the listener for the album to come. A Head Full of Dreams has an ambient opening that's broken by a funky bass, pounding drums, and a soaring guitar riff. The song is a gift that keeps on giving. It starts off solid, but just keeps getting better and better. It all culminates in the second half of the song, which is akin to a religious experience. The final verse is easily my favorite part of the track, and it comes to a close with a bright piano exit. A Head Full of Dreams is bouncy and super dancey, and prepare to hear me say the word dancey a lot throughout this list. The music video, as well as live performances, begin with a sample of Charlie Chaplin's famous speech from The Great Dictator, which is a nice sentiment, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't really fit with the themes of the song. I'm okay with using it as an intro for concerts in the music video, but I'm glad it's not in the studio version. Despite this tiny critique, A Head Full of Dreams is truly the best way to open an album, and it was wise of the band to use the song as the opener for their concerts at the time. Even though the 2015 album has its issues, at least it has a dope opening track. Number 27. Adventure of a Lifetime. Adventure of a Lifetime is another redeeming factor of Head Full of Dreams. Not that the album only has 2 redeeming factors, but these are the only 2 Head Full of Dreams songs on the list. Sorry, Head Full of Dreams fans. Adventure of a Lifetime is a disco-esque, dancey track about finding new love and feeling reinvigorated, hence the lyric, "You make me feel like I'm alive again." I mentioned how A Head Full of Dreams contrasts ghost stories, and Adventure of a Lifetime is possibly the best example of this. Ghost stories had themes of heartbreak and losing someone's love, making Adventure of a Lifetime the antithesis of the entirety of ghost stories. Everyone has already talked about the guitar riff, and yeah, it's awesome. It's quite possibly Johnny's best performance on the guitar. Chris has been begging Johnny to write a riff like this for years, using the famous riff from Sweet Child of Mine as a reference, and Johnny finally delivered an Adventure of a Lifetime. What isn't talked about as much, or at least I haven't heard that much talk around it, is the bass. It's not as impressive as the main riff, but the way it throbs throughout the track gives it a powerful presence. I wouldn't describe Adventure of a Lifetime as a lyrical goldmine, not to imply the lyrics are bad, but they don't stand out either. One thing I can say at least is I like the reoccurring metaphor of diamonds, which I have nothing more to say than it's neat. I could say more about the ending with Chris yelling woohoo and the band repeating. I can only imagine what it sounds like live at this moment of time, but I'm willing to bet it's awesome. I find it incredibly difficult not to yell woohoo whenever listening to the track. I remember listening to Adventure of a Lifetime to take notes on it for this very video, and I came close to doing it. Then I remembered I was downstairs and my family was all around me, and I stopped at the last millisecond to keep from embarrassing myself. The best way I could describe Adventure of a Lifetime is an explosion of energy. It's bombastic, loud, and kicks ass. Number 26, Orphans. Orphans is one of those songs that sounds happy when you listen to it, but if you look at the lyrics in isolation, it's actually depressing. Orphans tackles the Damascus bombings that took place in April 2018 by telling the fictional story of Rosaline and Baba, Arabic for father, both of who died in the bombings. Baba's children tell the story and are left as orphans after their father's death, which is why the song is called Orphans. It also explains the lyrics, I guess we'll be raised on our own then. Baba's children reminisce about Rosaline and Baba before they died and show their desire to have a normal childhood, which can be found in the lyrics, I want to know when I can go back and be young again. Some have criticized Orphans for turning such a serious subject into a pop song, which is a valid criticism, but I would argue the song's upbeat tone is meant to highlight how people in well-off countries don't really care about things like the Damascus bombings. We hear about it in the news, but we just live our lives happily while other people in the world suffer. I'm not trying to soapbox here, I'm just giving my interpretation of the song. The upbeat tone of Orphans actually kinda makes it more depressing if you really think about it. Despite the heavy subject matter, Orphans does maintain some optimism to it. The kids are hopeful they'll get their lives back, and the last lyrics of the song are pretty heartwarming. I would also like to point out the subtle sounds of sirens and explosions hidden in the track. They're much easier to hear in the instrumental version, but once you hear them, you can't unhear them, and it makes the song so much better. Orphans may be a conceptually sad song, but its upbeat and dancing tone prevent it from being a downer. While I understand people's issues with the song, that doesn't make me love it any less. Number 25, Midnight. Midnight is more or less the exact opposite of Orphans. Orphans pretends to be happy when it's actually sad, but Midnight is just sad. No masquerading, it is what it is. Midnight, one of the bleakest songs in Coldplay's discography, is about being depressed. It perfectly captures the hopeless, lost feeling of depression it should only be listened to when in the right mood. Some have criticized Midnight for its use of electronic instrumentals and autotune, but I have to say that Midnight is one of the rare songs where autotune is used as a tool to enhance the artistic integrity of the song instead of cheating. One of the themes of Midnight is feeling lost, and the distorted vocals and the instrumentals make the listener feel abandoned in an alien world. The track wouldn't be as impactful without them. Plus, the effect when Chris sings Swimming On sounds cool. Not to mention, the instrumental bridge is funky and fun. Despite the sadness of the song, there are sprinkles of hope, such as the reoccurring lyric, Leave a Light On. It's easily my favorite lyric in the song because it represents a light in the darkness. I often hear people describe Coldplay as a moody band, and I have no clue where they're getting this from. They have their emotional songs, sure, but even the saddest of Coldplay songs, such as Midnight, aren't without hits of optimism. Coldplay is one of the most optimistic bands I know, so calling them moody is just ridiculous. Midnight may be one of Coldplay's most depressing songs, but it's not sadness for the sake of it. The track has something to say about the nature of depression, as well as lighting a fire of hope. It sounds just like the band manifested depression itself into a song, which makes Midnight a poignant and powerful musical experience. Number 24, A Sky Full of Stars. Now this is much more upbeat than Midnight. And it's not a sad song pretending to be happy, it's genuinely a happy song. A Sky Full of Stars is a love song in which Chris compares his crush to a sky full of stars, which is a beautiful metaphor. Full disclosure, I'm kind of a space nerd. I'm not an expert by any means, but I find the subject fascinating, so naturally I'm going to gravitate towards a piece of music with such an aesthetic. Even with that bias removed, A Sky Full of Stars is a work of art. I heard some express the opinion that A Sky Full of Stars should not have been on Ghost Stories, but how could you say that about such a wonderful song? Ghost Stories is a pretty sad album, but Sky Full of Stars is the light at the end of the tunnel. It's a celebration that you got out of a rut. A Sky Full of Stars gives Ghost Stories purpose. Ghost Stories could have been just 10 songs of sad, but adding some happiness at the end makes the painful journey worthwhile. Ghost Story needs A Sky Full of Stars. It doesn't work without it. But, with that out of the way, let's talk about the music itself. The piano riff is catchy as hell. Whenever Coldplay gets the piano out, you know it's going to be something special. Be prepared to hear me comment on the piano a lot in this list. The lyrics are stellar, cause you get lighter the more it gets dark, and You're Such a Heavenly View are some standout examples of how good the lyrics are. One thing that I want to bring up from the music video is that a crowd joins Chris to sing the outro. In my opinion, it sounds so much better, and I wish it was in the studio version. Other than that, Sky Full of Stars is dancey perfection. I already confessed my love for anything space, and while A Sky Full of Stars isn't strictly about space, I still admire it for its constellation gimmick. A Sky Full of Stars adds an island of happiness in the sea of sadness that is Ghost Stories. 'Cause you're a sky full of stars. Number 23, Arabesque. Arabesque is arguably Coldplay's most experimental track, due in part to its jazzy 1920s aesthetic. Arabesque is about prejudice and how stupid and pointless it is, because nobody can control what they're born with and we all share the same blood. This point is emphasized with the final lyric, same fucking blood. This makes Arabesque the first official Coldplay song with explicit lyrics. The best part is that it wasn't done to be edgy. It demonstrates the band's frustration that the point isn't getting through to some people. This is my favorite lyric in the song, not only because of what it means, but because I was pleasantly surprised to hear explicit lyrics in a Coldplay song when I first listened to Arabesque. The second verse of the song is sung in French by Belgian musician Storme. I don't speak French, but I managed to find a translation online. Storme provides an antidote about how drops of water eventually lead to great rivers, calling back to the lyric, 2 raindrops in the same sea. It also demonstrates how we're all one people, and coming together can lead to greatness. I love the sax solo. I initially thought it was too long, and I should slap myself for saying that. Is it long? Yes. Does it overstay its welcome? Hell no. It's hard to make a long instrumental segment without losing the audience, but Arabesque manages to pull it off. The sax solo is a funky delight. Arabesque was released alongside Orphans as the lead singles for Everyday Life, and the difference between the two is like night and day. I remember someone on Reddit put it like this: Orphans is the Coldplay we love, Arabesque is the Coldplay we need. Considering how divided the world is nowadays, a song like Arabesque that reminds us that we share the same fucking blood is necessary, and it fits that description perfectly. That's why this song is so awesome and important. Number 22, Paradise. Paradise is one of Coldplay's more popular tracks and tells the story of a girl who had big dreams that unfortunately never came true. At first, she tries to escape into fantasy to cope, only to learn that just because you don't fulfill your dreams doesn't mean it's the end of the world, and that happiness can be found elsewhere. It's a positive message, and I feel like a lot of people could learn a thing or two from it. The musical composition in Paradise is pretty damn impressive. The strings give the track texture, the piano fills the verses and choruses with life, Martin's vocal delivery is pitch perfect, and the guitar, as brief as it is, gives the song a nice kick. If I were to describe the song's lyrics in one word, it would be poetic. Some of my favorites include "The wheel breaks the butterfly," "Every tear a waterfall," and "I know the sun must set to rise." I don't have any complaints with Paradise, other than the scene in the music video when Chris removes his head. Some may consider this nitpicky, and it is, but it kinda breaks immersion when you remove the head to your costume. But I'm grasping for straws. If my only complaint relating to the song has nothing to do with the music itself but the music video, then it's a good song. There was a time not too long ago when I would have considered Paradise the best Milo Xyloto song, but after properly listening to the album start to finish, there are tracks I would consider superior to Paradise. That doesn't make Paradise any less special for me, or else it wouldn't be on this list. It's a beautiful and uplifting song, so it's hard to hate. It's no surprise that this track is so popular. Number 21, The Hardest Part. The Hardest Part was released as a single for X and Y, and even though I love the song, I don't think it's single-worthy. There are plenty of tracks on X and Y that are far more worthy of the single treatment. Despite this, The Hardest Part is an amazing piece of music. The Hardest Part takes place after a breakup and depicts the conflicting emotions one feels after such an event. Sadness, confusion, anger, etc. The final verse in particular represents a mental breakdown of sorts. The character is questioning everything he thought he knew and all his actions. It's honestly something to behold. The musical composition of The Hardest Part isn't too crazy, but it manages to deliver an entertaining track. The piano melody is no clocks, but still pretty groovy. The distortion guitar truly captures that feeling of anger I brought up before. There's even an acoustic guitar subtly mixed to the song. It's almost buried by the other instruments, but once you notice it, you can't go back. I also have to shout out Chris's vocal performance. Apparently, some people have complained about Chris's falsetto, and I don't understand why. He's no Matt Bellamy or Freddie Mercury, but Chris can hit the notes, so I don't see what all the fuss is about. The Hardest Part is one of many examples of Chris Martin's impressive vocal range. I do have one gripe with the song. When Chris sings, and the strangest thing was waiting for that bell to ring, they should have rung an actual bell. The perfect opportunity was given to them on a silver platter, and they didn't take it. I'm aware this is a nitpick, and an incredibly petty one at that, but this song is already 99.9% awesome. If they rang an actual bell during that lyric, it would have won the other 0.01%. All joking aside, I never experienced a breakup myself, so my appreciation for the song admittedly boils down to surface level enjoyment. Maybe if I ever experience a breakup, The Hardest Part will hit differently, but for the time being, it's a strong highlight of X and Y. Number 20, Speed of Sound. Critics initially dismissed Speed of Sound, claiming it's too similar to clocks, which isn't technically untrue, but Speed of Sound is an entirely different listening experience than clocks. The similarities between the songs are nothing more than surface-level comparisons. Thematically speaking, Clocks and Speed of Sound lack similarities. While Clocks ponders over the meaning of life, Speed of Sound is about taking risks. Don't let new opportunities pass you by. If you never try, then you'll never know, as the song puts it. Speed of Sound has low-key inspired me to try new things, which isn't exactly the easiest thing for me to do, but hey, at least I'm trying. The lyrics in Speed of Sound are pretty good. The chorus refers to birds, which is where Coldplay's strange bird obsession began, if my memory is correct. There's also a hint of impatience found within the lyrics, especially the first few lines of the opening verse. This could hint at the protagonist of Speed of Sound being an adventurous bloke who doesn't want to wait around for life to happen to him. He wants to grab life by the reins and make it his bitch. And while I'm talking about the lyrics,
I don't like sand.
The composition of Speed of Sound gives it a unique atmosphere that can only work on X and Y. The piano riff is a common talking point amongst critics who dismiss Speed of Sound as a Clocks clone, and like I said before, this is nothing more than a surface level comparison. The piano riff here isn't going to make it on my list of favorite Coldplay piano pieces anytime soon, but that's not to imply it's bad, far from it. It opens the song and sets the stage pretty effectively. Will's steady beat on the drum gives the tune a good pace, and the synthesizers help contribute to the atmosphere I brought up earlier. X and Y has a pretty mixed reception among the fanbase. Personally, I think it's a good record, but not without its faults. One thing I could say in favor of X and Y is that Speed of Sound is an excellent highlight. Number 19. Hurts Like Heaven. Coldplay's 2011 album Milo Xyloto has a graffiti aesthetic, and the second track, Hurts Like Heaven, is all about graffiti. I believe the song tells a story of a young, troubled teen who likes to tag graffiti, which gets him into trouble. The teen's life is an endless cycle. He tags graffiti and feels happy, then he gets in trouble, which upsets him. So to feel better, he tags some more graffiti, which gets him in more trouble, etc., etc. To put it bluntly, their life hurts like heaven. Hurts Like Heaven's lyrics help make the track so enjoyable. Lines such as, "See the arrow they shot trying to tear us apart, took the fire from my belly and the beat from my heart," and "Use your heart as a weapon, and it hurts like heaven," are undoubtedly amazing, but my favorite moment from the track would have to be the call to action at the end of the second chorus. "So on a concrete canvas under cover of dark, on a concrete canvas I'll go making my mark. Armed with a spray can soul, I'll be armed with a spray can soul." Fucking epic. Hurts Like Heaven is head-bobbing and fast, due in part to the fast tempo, bouncy drum beat, roaring guitars, and whimsical synths. I also have to mention Johnny's epic solo in the bridge. His guitar work throughout the track is undoubtedly awesome, but the bridge stands out as a highlight. While Hurts Like Heaven isn't the opening track on Milo Xyloto, it's the first full track with the lyrics, so it might as well be. Listening to it definitely hypes you up and makes you want to dance. Perfect introduction to Milo Xyloto. Number 18. Amsterdam. Amsterdam is about keeping your emotions bottled up and how unhealthy that can be. By the end of the song, the character in Amsterdam finally vents his feelings to someone and feels the load lighten. Most of Amsterdam is a beautiful, ambient piano ballad, but kicks into high gear by the end when the rest of the band comes in. This shift in tone is meant to illustrate the change in the story. The piano ballad is the character keeping it all in, but when he finally vents, the guitar, drums, and bass joins the ensemble. It's clever songwriting at its best. The character's decision to finally let it all out clearly helps, as demonstrated by my favorite lyric in the song. "Stood on the edge, tied to a noose. You came along and you cut me loose." It's dramatic, beautiful, and also kinda sad. It reminds me of the scene from Inside Out where Riley finally vents to her parents about how much she misses home, and the three embrace each other and hug it out. That's the emotion that this lyric, and the rest of the whole song, fills me with whenever I listen to it. Remember earlier when I said that you know you're in for something good when Coldplay brings the piano out? They have several songs with an amazing piano line, and Amsterdam is one of many examples. The piano helps give Amsterdam an ambient, haunting, and cathartic atmosphere. The song is undoubtedly melancholy, but there's enough beauty in it to keep the listener from feeling sad, or at least that's how it is for me. Amsterdam is atmospheric and moody, but it has a positive message despite this. I don't necessarily put it in the same category as tracks like Midnight, where you have to be in the right mood to listen to it. Its angelic piano, slow pace, gloomy vibe, and the way it picks up after the second chorus makes Amsterdam a song worth returning to frequently. Number 17. Fly On. To avoid confusion, I'm referring to the first part of the song, Fly On. The track is called O, but O is the ambient second half. Fly On is the hidden track at the beginning. With that out of the way, I talked about piano pieces in Amsterdam, and Fly On is another one. The piano riff manages to be sad and beautiful at the same time, and the mixture of emotions rubs off on the rest of the track. This is another song you need to be in the right mood to listen to. Coldplay's Bird Obsession continues as the song's lyrics are built around the reoccurring metaphor of a flock of birds flying away. The flock of birds symbolizes life and how it moves on. With that said, I think now's a good time to explain the band's 2014 album. Ghost Stories was made after Chris Martin's divorce. The splitting up from his partner influenced the music he wrote from the album. All of the songs on Ghost Stories deal with themes of love, heartbreak, and sadness, and Fly On is no exception. The message of moving on in life in times of pain is what makes a song so emotional and poignant. The most heartbreaking lyric in the track would have to be, "Maybe one day I can fly with you." It shows us that even though Chris knows he should move on, it's still difficult to let go of what you once had. It just stabs me in the heart whenever I hear it. Calling Fly On a beautifully sad song isn't too far off. I would have preferred if it came before A Sky Full of Stars and maybe the album could end with O instead, but that's an issue with the album, not the song. Fly On is an underappreciated gem that I can't always listen to, but love nonetheless. Number 16. The Scientist. The Scientist is one of Coldplay's most popular songs, and it deserves this status. Chris Martin described this song by saying, "That's just about girls. It's weird that whatever else is on your mind, whether it's the downfall of global economics or terrible environmental troubles, the thing that always gets you most is when you fancy someone." Some people believe the song is literally about a scientist, but I think that's too on the nose. I believe The Scientist takes place after a breakup and the main character is trying to think about it logically to figure out where he went wrong, only to learn that love isn't a science. The Scientist is a metaphor to describe what the character is doing, not a literal description of him as a person. The Scientist is similar to Amsterdam in that it slowly builds up by adding more instruments to the composition, but instead of waiting for a specific point in the story to bring in the rest of the band, each instrument comes in at their own time. The acoustic guitar debuts at the end of the first chorus, the bass and drums enter at the start of the second verse, and finally, the distortion guitar comes in at the end to cap it all off. Speaking of instruments, the piano of The Scientist sounds superb. I know that I'm starting to sound like a broken record, but there's only so many ways you could say the piano's awesome before it gets old. The piano in The Scientist is instantly recognizable, and a big part of why the song is so iconic. The lyrics in The Scientist are breathtaking. The iconic line, "Nobody said it was easy," definitely takes the cake for me, but others such as, "Come up to meet you, tell you I'm sorry, you don't know how lovely you are, oh take me back to the start," and "Questions of science, science and progress do not speak as loud as my heart" aren't bad either. The Scientist more than deserves its popularity. The subject matter makes it easy for people to relate to, the lyrics are easy to understand and sing along to, and the composition demonstrates clear talent from the band. If there was any doubt of Coldplay's greatness, The Scientist has destroyed it. Number 15. Hypnotized. There isn't much love for the band's EPs on this list, but Hypnotized is one of the few exceptions. Hypnotized is nearly 6 minutes long, but it never feels like it overstates its welcome, which is hard to do for a song with such a length. Not a second of Hypnotized is wasted. It's very fitting that the track was named Hypnotized because the song is hypnotic and dreamy. Listening to it takes you to another world. Hypnotized is a love song, and Coldplay has quite a few love songs under their belt. Hypnotized manages to stand out with its graceful composition and soothing atmosphere. The ambient opening kinda sounds like you're falling asleep, while the rest of the song is a dream. The whimsical piano solidifies the dream aesthetic, and you're probably tired of me hearing talk about the piano, so I'll just say it's great and leave it at that. The ending is satisfying and awesome. I particularly love the lyric, "It was dark, now it's sunrise." Chris sings it with so much energy and confidence, and the way he projects it makes it hard for you not to feel the impact of the lyrics. In fact, Chris's confidence and energy in the final verse of the song is a part of what makes it such a satisfying conclusion. The instrumentation in the background also aids in the epic climax. It has just as much energy as Chris's vocals and is truly the culmination of the tune. Speaking of lyrics, one criticism I have of the song is that the second verse seems to be a commentary on the news. I'm willing to accept the possibility that I misinterpreted the second verse, but I don't know how else I'm supposed to interpret it. It just seems out of place. Other than that, Hypnotized is easily the best track from Kaleidoscope, and let's not forget about the Hypnotized app they made to go along with the track. Nice.
Now I'm hypnotized.
Sorry to cut it off here, but this is where part 1 has to come to an end. It shouldn't take too long for part 2 to come out. I wrote the scripts for both parts at the same time, so I wouldn't have to work on these videos as long as I did for my killers list. With that said, that's all for me for today, so come by next time. Can't wait to see you there. Until then, EB out.